Welcome to Are You Ready? With your Bible teacher, Carl Skrillo. Get ready to study your Bible.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Are You Ready? We are very blessed this evening, and we have a special guest once again. Before I introduce our guest, I want to make sure that if you're watching Are You Ready? If you've never subscribed, please subscribe, thumbs up, click notification, and share this video with as many people as possible. Very important tonight. A lot of information is going to be given. I want you to pay attention and ask God to give you wisdom. I just want to read one verse of scripture in Proverbs 1:7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. I hope everybody ask God for wisdom, because there's a lot of important information going to be shared tonight. So we are blessed once again to have on Are You Ready? David PYNE, and he has been on the program several times, and we're very honored to have him once again. Before we get started with lots of questions, and there's a lot of things happening in the world right now. Wars, rumors of wars are happening. We're going to talk about those tonight here on Are You Ready? David, Mr. PYNE, thank you for being with us here on Are You Ready? Can you please let the people who are watching, maybe they don't know who you are, introduce yourself, let people know who you are. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, it's great to be back in the show. I am currently the executive director of the Task Force on National Homeland Security, and I've also been a U.S. Army headquarters staff officer, and I've also been a leader in various veterans groups, and also served as the policy director for then Senator-elect Mike Lee.
Okay, very good. You have plenty of experience, right? Yes. Yeah. All right, here we go. And we got quite a bit, and so for the next hour or so, we got lots to cover. Okay, number one, let's begin with Russia and Ukraine. How do you see that going? From what I've seen, because I've seen the news, for Ukraine, it doesn't look good at all. And I know when we last spoke, it wasn't going good that time either. And I think it's getting worse. What would you say? Let's start off there, Russia and Ukraine.
Well, I think what you say is exactly what I predicted. I predicted that Ukraine had zero chance to win the war, no matter how many weapons we sent them. We sent them, at least 113 billion worth of weapons and financial aid. They used everything they could. They threw everything they could into their failed summer-fall counteroffensive against the Russians. And they succeeded in liberating 0.25% of Ukrainian territory. So it was a massive failure. If you look at the territorial gains since the beginning of the year, despite this massive Ukrainian offensive, Russia's actually gained more territory than the Ukrainians have this year. So, when I say this year, I meant last year. So last year was a better year for Russia, not for Ukraine. And it's the one good thing is it's injected a healthy dose of realism even into some mainstream media sources who are now openly supporting my Korean-style ceasefire plan that I released in September of 2022. So that's one encouraging thing. The sad thing is the Biden administration and neoconservative Republicans in the Senate are as self-delusional as ever. They continue to want to throw another $61 billion in U.S. taxpayer money to Ukraine, much of which gets embezzled, of course, by Zelensky and his fellow corrupt Ukrainian government cohorts. And it's because of Zelensky. We keep finding out more revelations about Zelensky and about Ukraine. One of the things we found out I found out just today, is that there's been 700,000 Ukrainian draft dodgers, which is nearly as many as we've seen in Russia. And Ukraine started out with 3.5 times less people. So in terms of morale, I think the morale on the Russian side is likely significantly higher at this point than it is for Ukraine.
Wow. So I didn't know that 700,000 have not gone to fight. Because I've seen that the death toll is horrible. I mean, what's happening there?
Yeah, I
Because
mean, Ukrainian defense ministry have themselves admitted that 500,000 Ukrainians have either died or been seriously wounded since the war began. That's soldiers, of course.
oh my gosh. Wow. Now, knowing that it looks like this is just about over, but it seems like the NATO wants it to continue. Will Russia now? This is the new thing because I don't know they're creating this thing to create some sort of fear that they will. Will Russia? What do you think? Will Russia advance into the Baltics? Because that's the new thing. Well, everybody, what I've heard, Poland and Norway, all the European, Eastern European, they're next to Russia, all getting ready. Russia is about to come in. What do you think?
Well, first of all, before this war started, Russia wasn't even viewed as a threat to NATO, and NATO was completely disunified. No one wanted to spend money in defense among our European allies.
Mhm.
President Trump obviously was trying to strong arm them to get them to defend themselves, and didn't work really. I mean, I guess it worked to a limited extent with a few countries. But for the most part, less than 1/3 of NATO members were spending even 2% on their GDP on national defense. So when Russia invaded, suddenly, European NATO members got a little jittery. And then, after the interim peace agreement was signed on March 31st, 2022, in Istanbul, between Russia and Ukraine, Russia withdrew from fully half of Russian occupied territory in Ukraine. And then suddenly they went from gloom and doom to, hey, Ukraine can win this thing. They're like, let's push deep into Russia. Let's see if we can overthrow Putin and put him in front of a war crimes tribunal. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, the Nazi Germany with 315 German army divisions, that were the Germans, man for man, were the best soldiers in at that time in history.
Right.
They couldn't defeat Russia. They couldn't defeat the Soviet Union. Napoleon couldn't defeat the Russians, the Swedes, the Poles. I mean, there's 4 different countries that went all the way to Moscow or the outskirts of Moscow that could not defeat Russia. And we're supposed to think that Ukraine, a country with less than 5 times as many people, less than 5 to 10 times less tanks, aircraft, and planes, economy 11 times smaller, is going to be able to defeat Russia. They haven't. All you have to do is look at a map, like a battlefield map from the Institute of the Study of War, and you can see that Russia has currently annexed 18% of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory. How much territory has Ukraine occupied of Russia? 0.0%. So, and yet we've heard, even when Russia occupied 20% of Ukraine, all we heard was nonstop Ukrainian propaganda from the liberal media saying Ukraine is winning, and look how that turned out. It's blown up in their face. So, yes, as far as the possibility of Russian attack on NATO, it's completely predicated to the degree that we provide arms to Ukraine. The more arms we give them, the greater the chance they'll attack the U.S. and NATO. Okay. So, it's Finland and Sweden. They joined NATO at exactly the wrong time because they're painting a target on their backs where Russia would never. They don't attack neutral countries. It's not like the Soviet times when they invaded countries all the time. They only attack NATO countries or NATO proxies, de facto NATO member states like Ukraine.
Exactly. So they were pushed into becoming part of NATO because they were neutral. I mean, you look at history. Russia never thought of invading Finland, never, and they have a very large border with Russia.
Yeah, so, not since World War II.
Since World War II, right?
Right.
So then it doesn't make any sense for them to say, well, let's put them in join them in NATO and make them part of NATO. That's a great idea. Then the Russians say, wait a minute, you're going to put NATO forces on our border? I said, no, that's not going to work. So
Yeah, it's a self-defeating prophecy. The Lindsey Grahams of the world predicted that Russia was gonna attack. They were gonna commit some kind of invasion or aggression all along. But it's they waited to do that until we actually provoked them. They never invaded a neighbor until under post-Soviet Russia until the Bucharest Declaration was issued in 2008.
right.
In which Bush got NATO to say that Ukraine and Georgia would join NATO, shortly, and Russia responded by occupying 20% of Georgia, and then of course the 2014 Biden authorized CIA funded coup that overthrew democratically elected Ukrainian President Yanukovych.
Yeah.
That caused Russia to invade Crimea and support the Donbass separatists that were kind of majority Russian in the eastern Donbass region. So the thing to learn about Putin is he only attacks when he feels threatened.
Correct.
So if he was a new Stalin, if he was a new Hitler, he would have invaded and occupied and annexed most of the former Soviet Union by now, and very likely there would have been almost no reaction because, for example, if Putin wanted to invade Kazakhstan tomorrow, he would be able to do so without, there's no way the U.S. could respond militarily short of nuclear weapons or, strategic bombers. And so he would, he could annex over half of of Russia's lost territory they lost when the Soviet Union collapsed. But he hasn't done that. And he could have annexed all of Ukraine, invaded and annexed all of Ukraine in either in 2014 or 2022 if he'd done so with enough forces. And, he's refused, he's had 300,000 Russian reservists massed on the borders of Kharkiv Oblast, ready to pounce in a new offensive. And he hasn't authorized any offensive. He hasn't authorized the targeting of President Zelensky or Ukrainian government defense ministry buildings. If this was a true full-scale war, instead of, essentially Putin forcing the Russian military to fight with one hand tied behind its back, the war would have been over long ago, and Russia would have easily conquered Ukraine.
Yes, I totally agree. I think it's like you're poking the bear, literally bear, poking. Come on. It's like, and when you hear the news, when you hear Stoltenberg from NATO chief, we are getting ready because the Russians are going to attack. We must get ready because they're going to attack. So what we're doing is just creating, and everybody saying, well, the Russians are going to attack. We got to do this. I just think it's creating fear, and everybody's going along, hey, they're going to attack, but they're poking them. Okay, next question. Okay, let's switch now to Israel. If you would go talk, what do you think about the war between Israel and Hamas? Because they're already in the south, and now the U.S. is dealing with Yemen and bombing Yemen and trying to deal with them. What do you think what will Israel attack Lebanon next? The U.S. has told them, Biden has told them, please don't do so. Don't go into Lebanon. Don't attack Lebanon. Don't go against Hezbollah. What do you think could happen?
Well, first, I want to, categorically condemn the brutal and horrific Hamas terrorist attacks on Israel.
Yes.
Killed 1,200 people on October 7th. I thought was despicable. I think Israel was well within its rights to defend itself and to stage a partial invasion, occupation of Gaza. My hope, of course, was that it would be short term. That would be primarily, an air campaign that was, surgical strikes primarily against Hamas military targets. And unfortunately, that's not what we've seen. What we've seen, the Israelis, I think, overreact and bomb a lot of civilians with dumb bombs. They don't use precision weapons. They primarily use dumb gravity bombs and artillery, unguided artillery rounds. And they're not. It looks like they don't have no plan to end the war. And when I say that, it appears based on all their statements that the plan is to permanently reoccupy Gaza. Of course, Israel did occupy Gaza for many years, from at least 1967 until 2005 when they pulled out.
Correct.
And then a couple of years later, Hamas seized power in a kind of a military coup. So at this point, we have President Biden calling for a two-state solution. I was really never supportive of that. But when Israel first invaded, for a second, I thought maybe that might be a good idea. But instead, I'm about to release a new peace plan, and essentially what I'm calling for is something that would be acceptable to Israel, which is essentially to fully demilitarize Gaza, to have all Hamas terrorists surrender to UN peacekeepers in exchange for amnesty and safe passage out of the country. And then Israel would retain permanent security control of Gaza, with a newly elected Palestinian Authority legislature that would operate under a constitution which essentially forbids them to attack Israel, forces them to recognize the state of Israel and live in peace, with perhaps Palestinian police. But there is an increasing risk, which I didn't think there was much of one before. But the longer this conflict goes on, the more inflamed Israel's Arab neighbors are becoming. The more they're aligning increasingly with Iran. Iran is a nuclear power, I believe, based on the intelligence that I've seen. And Israel is as well. So the last thing we want to see is a regional conflagration between two nuclear powers.
Correct. Now that you gave a lot of info there. Number one, you mentioned Iran. We've said that, and Dr. Pry, when he came on the program, I asked him the same, and I've asked you the same, because it seems the idea that is out there in the news is that Iran absolutely does not have any nuclear weapons. They're months away, maybe a year away. They don't have it. There's no way they do. But when I talked to Dr. Pry and I've asked you, you believe that they do have at least one or two nuclear bombs. Can you let people know what you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, it was really Dr. Pry that kind of enlightened me. I actually believed that before he informed me. But essentially what he said is as far back as 2003, Iran was in the final stages of nuclear weapons development. That was over 20 years ago. He said, the level of research and development they had was equivalent to where the Manhattan Project, of course, the U.S. Program to develop the atomic bomb during World War II. We were only 3 months away from detonating it. So essentially, we detonated a nuclear bomb in July of 1945. So back then, even they were around April 1945. The other data point is not only did they have all this, all the sufficient uranium and enriched uranium and centrifuges, but they also started an ICBM program in 2005. There's no other country in recorded history that's ever had an ICBM program that hadn't already developed nuclear weapons. So there's no point to have an ICBM without nuclear weapons because they're so expensive to produce, and a conventional ICBM would do very little damage. So, and there's a lot of other evidence as well, but it is, I do find it odd that U.S. intelligence continues to cover not just for China, but for Iran as well, claiming that they suspended their nuclear weapons program 20 years ago. And there's literally no evidence to suggest that. But it is, it is very entertaining to hear. I was still in my 30s during the 2000s
Right.
when they first started saying, "Oh, Iran's only months or weeks away from a nuclear weapon, so we have to do something about that. We have to bomb them." Well, that
Yeah,
was 15 to 20 years ago when I first started hearing that, and
exactly.
singing the same song. This
Exactly.
was during the Bush years that they
Correct.
first started saying that before 2008. So uh, either Iran is just stupid because they don't want a nuclear weapon, or we're being lied to by U.S. intelligence and given disinformation by our government.
Yeah, and something that I've always think, if they do not have it, they would have attacked already, wouldn't they? Wouldn't have Israel already attacked, or the U.S. would have attacked Iran already if they didn't? But if
Yes,
they do, that'd be well, maybe we shouldn't. What do you
so
think?
there's a story behind that. So it's been U.S. Kind of the untold U.S. policy to appease Iran
Hmm.
uh, from the Bush years under Bush, Obama, and of course Biden. All those three presidents appeased Iran in every possible way. Uh, Obama, of course, was the worst offender, giving 152 billion to Iran to help them, build more nuclear missiles and fund terrorist operations worldwide.
Hmm.
But that is, it, it, Iran is a major threat. They're, as I mentioned, they're nuclear power. They likely have dozens of nuclear weapons. And the Israelis reportedly did ask President Bush or the U.S. government during the 2000s Bush presidency whether asking for friend or foe codes to fly over Iraq. So
Hmm.
one of the safety measures we have in place with our allies is that we use friend or foe codes for our aircraft, combat aircraft. So if there's combat aircraft overflying an area we control or our own airspace, we won't shoot them down accidentally. So Bush refused to give the friend or foe codes to Israel. So essentially, he vetoed any Israeli attack on Iranian nuclear weapon sites. So that was really kind of the last straw. Bush and Obama vetoed it. At this point, any Israeli talk or anyone else talking about attacking Iranian nuclear development sites would really be useless because they already have ICBMs and IRBMs in underground bunkers and silos.
Now I don't want to keep going on this, but you mentioned again. You said dozen. Did you say dozen? You said dozens of
Well,
ICBMs.
there's really, to be honest, there's really no accurate assessment
Right.
for the exact quantity of nuclear weapons that Iran has today.
Right.
I learned back in I think it was the 90s that Iran had purchased, tactical nuclear weapons from Kazakhstan.
Hmm.
So that was around 1995.
Okay.
It was a minority CIA report. In U.S. intelligence, there's essentially kind of a majority report, which is kind of a consensus document. And then there's a minority opinions, and it was a minority opinion by the CIA
Mhm.
that Iran had about 4 tactical nuclear warheads, which potentially they could employ operationally if they were able to kind of crack into the codes. Iran may have been a nuclear power far earlier than 2005, but certainly from 2005, I think they've been a nuclear power. We need to treat them as such. We can't have the Lindsey Grahams, calling for bombing Iran, or Nikki Haley or other crazy neoconservative warmongers like
Mhm.
that, because it could lead us to a nuclear exchange. And not
Yeah.
only that, Iran, just before the Hamas attacks on Israel in
Mhm.
October 7th, they deployed a second super EMP satellite, which they at an altitude of 280 miles
I heard that.
in orbit, low Earth orbit, which they could potentially use to destroy the U.S.
Wow. And would you say that is a strong possibility? Would you just mention of them using that?
Yeah, I would say if Iran feels that their regime is at risk, if we, for example, if we started a bombing campaign against Tehran, I think it's very possible, probably likely that they would retaliate with a super EMP attack in the U.S. to destroy the U.S. Entirely.
But it doesn't make sense. Why would we do a bombing run on a country that has nuclear weapons?
Because U.S. intelligence continues to deny that they have them. I mean, when the evidence is staring them in the face. So
Yes.
I don't know if there's a consensus. Kind of Trump seemed to let the cat out of the bag when he gave a public statement, which he said we would not allow Iran to build more nuclear weapons. So that would suggest that he had heard or believed the reports that Iran had already had nuclear weapons, and we were just trying to get them to freeze their nuclear arsenal. It's hard for me to say, is U.S. intelligence willfully blind to the Iran nuclear issue, or are they simply passing disinformation because it's politically useful to do so?
Okay, you've answered that one. Okay, you mentioned that one already. Okay, now, why did I have another one. Why did Iran attack Syria, Iraq, and Pakistan? Why do you think they did that?
Iran. I think Iran is feeling pretty secure again with their small nuclear arsenal, with long-range ballistic missiles. They have a huge ballistic and cruise missile arsenal. They are really almost the regional power over the Persian Gulf, almost the regional hegemon.
Yes.
Have been for some years, thanks to George Bush invading and destroying Ba'athist, secular Iraq, and overthrowing Saddam, which was their number one enemy, and expending the lives of thousands of U.S. soldiers to further and expand the Iranian Iranian empire throughout the region. But of course, Iraq and Syria, most of the strikes were Iranian proxy attacks. In terms of the actual missile strikes from Iranian territory, they attacked what they claimed to be an Israeli intelligence station located in the Kurdish capital of Erbil. So it's hard to know if that's true or not. I think there were 4 Kurds that were killed. Iraq actually broke off diplomatic relations with their Iranian ally. I mean, Iran and Iraq actually have an alliance agreement. So, and I've always said that Iraq is essentially an Iranian proxy. So this was a major, unless they're just doing it for show, this was a major break between Iran and its proxy vassal state of Iraq. And then as far as Pakistan, they didn't, Iran didn't even really give a good response for that. I think they claimed they were trying to strike some rebels in Pakistan without really having any further explanation about that. And Pakistan hit back with missile strikes on Iranian territory. So Iran and Pakistan are both nuclear powers, but Pakistan likely has more nukes than Iran. So it's a little baffling why Iran would attack a nuclear superior power and take risks like that. But obviously that it's a risk that has, I guess, paid off so far. Pakistan has, only engaged in minimal counterattacks.
I guess they were willing to give it and see what would happen, but Pakistan did send some. Didn't they fire back?
They fired some missiles back at Iran.
Yeah, and I think after that they're back to being friends again. I think I heard some of them.
Certainly not friends. I mean, they're formal military allies. They're part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is kind of the new, the Second Warsaw Pact, according to Vladimir Putin.
Okay. All right. Can you explain? Now, this is something I heard recently, just a few days ago, because people have been hearing this sound on radios across the country, and they said it was due to the dead hand system of Russia. Can you explain to our audience what is the dead hand system?
Yeah, the dead hand or perimeter system is a system in Russia that would automatically launch Russia's nuclear weapons at their pre-programmed targets in the event that communications were lost following a enemy attack on their nuclear command structure. So in other words, if we were to launch even one missile that impacted in the vicinity of Moscow, that was a nuclear missile, and that significantly undermined communications to the point where communications were lost between the president of the Russian Federation and the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff, then presumably Russia's nuclear arsenal would automatically launch at the United States. So
Wow.
that's a scary prospect. But the more I've
Mhm.
studied it, the more I've come to realize that it's not something that can happen by malfunction. It has to be like verified, essentially, enemy
Mhm.
a nuclear strike on Russian territory.
Eh,
But another possibility is if we were to engage in a massive cyber attack on their nuclear command system, even if it was unintentional, then
mhm.
it's possible also that they could that the perimeter system would activate and we could get nuked in response. So it's a very dangerous game if we
Mhm.
want to be cyber attacking their command and control and communications at the national level.
Do you think, because I see all these, they're doing these drills. They started with 90,000 soldiers near the border of Russia. Is NATO hoping that Russia does a misstep? But in my mind, I am sorry, I can't understand why we would even attempt. It's like we think we can have a conventional war that it will never go nuclear. Why are we so close in doing these drills right in the border, close to the border of Russia?
So, I mean, the Biden regime and NATO leaders have been deliberately provoking
Mhm.
Russia for years. Obviously, extremely provocative actions over the
Mhm.
last 2 years with NATO's proxy war in Ukraine.
Yes.
And this is just in furtherance of that. I mean, it's idiotic. It accomplishes nothing.
Idiotic.
Uh,
I
you know,
agree.
the idea is supposedly to show strength because we've never had a NATO exercise with this many troops since the Old Forger uh, exercises in the mid '80s
Mhm.
during the height of the Cold War.
Correct.
But all it does is serve to continue to underscore and make real all of Putin's paranoid fantasies. I mean, you know, Russian leaders have always been paranoid of the U.S.
Mhm.
Ever since the Russian Civil War, when we landed some troops on Russian territory and tried to help the White Russian generals win the war.
Mhm.
But everything that Biden has done has confirmed as actually absolutely accurate and true every single one of Putin's, seemingly delusional paranoid fantasies. They're not delusional. Biden has repeatedly stated he wants Putin gone. He wants regime change. He wants Putin overthrown. He wants him hauled in front of the Hague for a international war crimes tribunal. He wants to collapse Russia. He wants to crush their economy. I mean, these are existential threats, and so it just pushes the world closer to potential nuclear war. I mean, if there is, I can tell you right now, as an expert,
Mhm.
Russia expert, if we go to war with Russia, it's going to go nuclear. It's going to go cyber on day one, uh,
Mhm.
super EMP or nuclear within 3 weeks. And Russia has very high confidence, as explained by a NATO intelligence officer, senior ranking officer or commander, just in the last couple of weeks, who stated that Russia has, they're totally unconcerned or unworried about using nuclear weapons against NATO countries in Europe because they don't believe Biden would respond in kind. And I think they're absolutely right.
Mm. The Biden would not respond if a nuclear bomb is sent from Russia into, let's say, England. They wouldn't. The U.S. would not respond. Is
I
that
don't
correct?
I mean, if they took out London, I think he'd probably be forced to respond. But what I'm
Right.
talking about is a significant number of tactical nuclear weapons. If Russia were to employ, let's say, 24 tactical nuclear weapons against NATO frontline states, Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, the Baltic states, Romania, Slovakia, I don't think I'm very confident that Biden would respond by not only by not using nuclear weapons in response,
Right.
but actually trying to call for immediate ceasefire understandably, to prevent a potential full scale nuclear exchange between the U.S. and the Russian Federation, which would destroy the U.S. and it might destroy Russia as well.
Exactly. So my thought, when I think about this, I started thinking, this is crazy. You said it's idiotic. But the idea that we could have a war with Russia. Russia is not Iraq. Okay, uh, you know, we're talking about a nation that has over 5,000 nuclear weapons.
8,000 by my count.
How much?
Over 8,000 by my
8,000. Really?
yeah.
Whoa. Okay. 8,000. 8,000 nuclear weapons. Why would anybody, well, we it's like I'm thinking, are they sitting in a room like the situation room and they say, well, no, we got a chance. We might have a chance if we do this. We might make it. We might do some change. We'll go in there, we'll do this, and this is all going to work out, Mr. President. Trust us. It's a plan. What do you think? Are there people sitting around letting him know, if we move here and we do this, we may still win?
Biden has been pursuing a policy that I call a policy of national suicide with regards to, his war against Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
I've compared him to Adolf Hitler at the end. At the end of the war, Hitler was in his bunker in Berlin saying, when FDR died, he thought it was a sign from Providence that it wasn't too late for Germany to win the war, even though Germany was in the process of being overrun by Soviet, U.S., and British troops.
Yes.
So, that's the state of denial we face, not only in Biden, but neoconservatives like Nikki Haley that pose such a great threat to our country and the Republican Party as well.
So we're in like you just said, we're in a state of denial, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move now as time progresses to North Korea. Will they, because North Korea has been firing, I think just today, they fired another missile, or yesterday. Will they attack the South? Will America attack North Korea? Again, that's another crazy stuff because we know North Korea, absolutely, we know, everybody knows that they have nuclear weapons. Do you think that in the back of somebody's mind, they think, we could possibly attack North Korea?
So we're not going to attack North Korea. Obviously, that ship has sailed. They've been a nuclear power since at least 1993. However, there was a recent article by two top North Korean experts that said that Kim Jong-un has made the decision to fight a war against South Korea and presumably the U.S. as well. But North Korea is kind of it's a Chinese puppet state. It's a communist Chinese puppet state.
Yes.
And he's on a short leash. So he's not going to do anything without Chinese President Xi Jinping's permission. So the only way I see North Korea going to war against South Korea and the U.S. Would be if Biden makes good on his pledge to defend Taiwan militarily. That China is on the verge of blockading Taiwan following the election of this new Independence Party president, William Chin-T. So, that's a crisis that's coming. And as I've stated in my Real War Substack at dpyne.substack.com, I published a number of articles in which I stated that any war with the U.S. and China over Taiwan would quickly expand to a four-front war. It'd be Russia invading the Baltics. It would be Iran occupying Iraq, maybe Syria, attacking Israel with troops, North Korea invading South Korea, and then China probably invading perhaps the Philippines, certainly Japan and Taiwan, and perhaps even Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast after a super EMP attack. So that's a very troubling prospect. It's something we don't need, and it's something that Russia and China don't want. That's their backup plan. They don't want to go to war with the U.S. China, Russia really doesn't have. They just want to be left alone. Essentially, they want to NATO troops to be withdrawn from their borders. So that they have primarily defensive concerns. But in terms of China, they do want to become the world hegemon.
Yes,
or rather, there's not going to be a world hegemon unless the U.S. is destroyed. But rather, they would be the most powerful country in the world, militarily, economically, and industrially. And they've already pretty much reached that. Based on my estimation, they have way more, probably almost double as many deployed nuclear weapons that we do with their recent massive nuclear buildup. Their army's large. They have a larger army, larger navy, coast guard, the largest nuclear ballistic missile force, nuclear capable ballistic force in the world by far. And of course, super EMP weapons and nuclear hypersonic weapons we don't have. So they've already reached that level, but they, it's really a nuclear red line for them that they retake control of Taiwan. They've attempted to do so peacefully, but the election of this new president makes it clear that peaceful reunification is not going to happen unless President Trump is elected. I think there would be a chance of that under Trump.
Oh, you think under Trump there could be a peaceful resolution to China, Taiwan?
I do. Yeah, Trump has made very clear that his number one goal is avoiding World War III, ensuring America's survival. And he knows that in order to do that, we have to make peace with Russia and Ukraine with a peace deal. And he's volunteered to lead that, lead a U.S. delegation in negotiating a peace deal with Putin that he says he could do in 24 hours. Of course, it wouldn't be 24 hours. It could be a couple of weeks,
right?
Perhaps, probably no more than that.
Exactly.
But then, if China were to attack Taiwan, I don't think that Trump would act to defend Taiwan. I just don't. Based on he's made a number of statements in which he's basically stated he would not. He would want to stay out of a war with China. And his, we know how he loves making deals. So he would. I think he would love the chance to make a peace deal. If China were to blockade and attack Taiwan, I think he would immediately try to start peace negotiations to see if there was some kind of peace deal that could permanently end the conflict with China and Taiwan.
Okay, let me ask you, when it comes to China and Taiwan, what do you think the percentage of them doing something? Here we are, we're about to finish the month of January 2024. Do you think the chances are this year would they attempt to do something, or next year? What do you think?
I think there's about a 70% chance they attack by November of this year.
Oh, really? 70%
Yeah,
by
I
November?
think so. China, Xi Jinping has his own timetable that he hasn't really revealed, but he's kind of alluded to kind of a 2025 time frame for forced reunification. So,
right.
The only thing that could stop him would be if the U.S. were to open up serious, reunification talks between the U.S., China, and Taiwan, which involved a clear timetable. In which case, we could come to a reunification agreement that wouldn't be fully implemented, say, until 2027. And I think Xi Jinping would probably be fine with that. But short of that, I don't see any chance of that happening under Joe Biden whatsoever. He's going to invade, and probably no later than early next year.
Okay. So the chances are 70% by November of this year.
Yeah, probably closer to 75%, but
75%.
It's hard to know for sure.
So they will. Okay. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm thinking of is, do you think that what's happening, these nations are all coordinated? Iran is an ally of Russia, Russia an ally of China, China an ally of North Korea. They're all allies, right?
That's right.
They can coordinate.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility, but this comes to my mind, I don't know, what do you think? Could they do something simultaneously and overload the U.S. if they say, well, we're going to do this. Hey, if we're going to do this, you go there, you do it, and we're all going to do it right at the same time. Is that a possibility?
It's almost guaranteed that they would do it that way if Biden defends Taiwan. Yeah, that's definitely the plan. The only question mark for me would be whether Russia invades the Baltics or whether they, kind of serve as a military backup for China in the Pacific. But Iran would certainly, I think they'd stage, tens of thousands of troops through Iraq and Syria. Perhaps even into Lebanon, but primarily North Korea. North Korea would be the big one that I could 100% guarantee they would invade South Korea if we went to war with China.
Okay. So do you think, because people are talking the word World War III, would that kind of thing happening all simultaneously would lead to a world war, correct?
Well, it'd be a world war if it was just the U.S. and China alone.
alone?
Because China, this is a clash of empires. The U.S.
Mm.
has been pushing its liberal empire, westward against China, eastward against Russia, all the way to its borders, in Ukraine.
Mhm.
That's basically what NATO is. I mean, NATO is part. It's probably the biggest element of America's liberal empire, as Senator Josh Hawley rightly called it. And
Mhm.
so the war in Ukraine really isn't. It wasn't started by Russian imperialism. It was started by U.S. imperialism.
Correct.
And I'm saying that as someone who loves the U.S. I'm 100%
Yeah.
pro-U.S.
Mhm.
America first. But
Yeah.
I'm also a realist, just on the basis of foreign policy realism. If
Mhm.
the U.S. had left, as you mentioned, if the U.S. had left Ukraine as a neutral state, saying, all Biden had to do to prevent the war was to say, Ukraine will never join NATO because we're not going to let it. Then Putin wouldn't have had a need to invade. I mean, as long as the guarantee was public and it
Mhm.
was in writing, Putin would not have invaded Ukraine. So that's why I say that's why I call the war in Ukraine Biden's war in Ukraine, even though it's Putin doing the invading. It's Biden
Right.
that started the war.
Correct. Because
So
all that they were looking, and I remember when it all started in 2021, December of 2021, when Lavrov went to the U.S., went to the UN. You guys, listen, if you do this, we got to we want security guarantees. You're about to get right at our border. It's unacceptable. We do not want Ukraine to be part of NATO. That just won't work. You've let all these other nations be part of it. Ukraine, no, it doesn't work. And then they said, forget it. And like you said, that was it.
yeah,
We
that's
have no choice but to go in and attack.
yeah.
So,
Biden administration told Russia to pound sand, and they were very sincere. I mean, they were, of course, they were a little combative about it. Like, you need to accept our terms, but they would have been happy to negotiate.
exactly.
Even 30 or 40% of the terms, if we had accepted them, Putin would not have felt any need to invade. That's just a fact.
That is absolutely true. Okay. Oh, let me ask you, because a lot of times people talk about what do you think if because I heard that Russia, now this is something I just heard about Alaska. Do you think they would this see that's far fetched, but would Russia, let's say this whole thing started going, right?
Right.
The whole thing simultaneously, would Russia say, well, this is our chance? This is our moment. We want Alaska back. Uh, would you think that's a possibility? I mean, as crazy as that could seem.
It's an absolute possibility. If Biden defends Taiwan against a Chinese attack or
Right.
invasion or blockade, and China responds by destroying the U.S. either with a massive comprehensive nationwide cyber attack or a super EMP attack, perhaps even limited nuclear strikes, that would be Russia's green light to reoccupy and re-annex Alaska. I don't doubt that they do it. I think that's their plan. I don't think, as over the last, 20, 30 years, I've modified my thinking about Russia. I don't think Russia wants to destroy us. I don't think Putin wants to destroy us. I don't even think he's gonna, he's gonna try to destroy us, even,
Right.
unless we do that to Russia,
Correct.
it's kind of massive escalation. But I do think that if China and North Korea destroy the U.S., then he will take advantage of that, and he will move to re-annex probably all the former Soviet republics and Alaska as well. He might even try to reoccupy Eastern Europe.
Wow. But that would be if everything else goes that way, correct?
Yeah, that's entirely, everything is in the capable hands of our president, Joe Biden. We have so much trust and confidence in him. Someone who's suffering from dementia, doesn't know what day of the week it is, and has to be escorted off the podium to avoid making a fool of himself and shaking hands with ghosts and going off the wrong direction.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen the videos.
yeah, we're facing a very perilous period in our history. That's why we need to turn back to God and
Yes.
ask that He bless us to be able to survive this dangerous period, because there's a very real chance if Biden makes the wrong decision on Taiwan, that America won't exist anymore as we know it. It won't exist as a country. It will be,
Yes.
at best, it'll be shattered in pieces.
Yes, it would be destroyed. I mean, it'd be like a third world nation. It could possibly, correct? If
Yeah,
oh,
if we get an EMP attacked, I mean, America's going to turn into something resembling the German Confederation, with a bunch of city states and
yes.
principalities and regional state powers.
We hope and pray it does not happen. Now, here's a question, one of the last ones tonight. Uh, Now, is this true? I heard this also. If a war happens during the time of the election, does that president who's there stay in power even if the other individual wins? Is that true?
Well, I mean, we know that Biden acts as a dictator. He's trying to establish a one-party fascist or socialist republic.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I think there's certainly a threat of that. I think, Trump would never do that, of course, but
Yeah.
Biden, I wouldn't put him past him, for him to cancel or, he would say, I have to postpone the elections, just like Zelensky, right? Zelensky's supposed to be a Democrat president, and he's indefinitely postponed the presidential elections, which were scheduled for early this year, because
Well,
he wants to remain de facto dictator
correct.
indefinitely. Using the continuation of the war as a pretext. So, yeah, I think that's a likely possibility. If we're in a situation where we've been partially cyber attacked by China,
Mhm.
I think that it's possible Biden could declare martial law to cancel the elections and stay in power as a de facto dictator. Absolutely.
Right. And then with no time when the elections would happen again. Wow, we have covered a lot of stuff here tonight, a lot of things. Is there is there anything you want to? Well, here's a question because you mentioned it. One last one. This is that last one. You mentioned a cyber attack or an EMP attack, and I remember I talked to Dr. Pine. I'll ask you, Dr. Pry, ask you, Mr. Pine. Do you think that America would be ready for any kind of an EMP attack at this moment in time?
So absolutely not. I mean, it's been a total dereliction of duty. U.S. leaders have not prepared any defense against EMP attack. We have limited EMP hardening in terms of our military, our nuclear triad, but may not be sufficient even for Air Force One. A super EMP attack it emits a much stronger EMP wave. So we would not. Yeah, it's assured that the grid wouldn't survive, and even if the war ended after the EMP attack, we didn't get invaded. I mean, it would take many years, perhaps over a decade, to be able to restore power even in limited areas, in large scale limited areas. So yeah, we're not ready at all for an EMP attack, and we don't have the power transformers to replace the ones that we lose. We have 3% reserves, power transformers in reserve, but they would be, they're so heavy, they weigh many tons, that we would require, like large scale. I mean, they take, I think, 18 months or more to install. That's with all of our power working. Imagine how difficult it would be if we didn't have any working trucks or cars or powerlifting equipment. It would be probably never. We would probably never have power restored without massive outside help from our allies. So we need to take action to provide for our family with a 1 year food storage supply. As much prescription medicines as we can hoard for whatever our medical needs might be, and as a large supply of water as well, and probably solar generators and ammo, weapons.
Oh, okay, one more. What would you say the percentage of a chance of having this kind of an EMP? What do you think at this moment in time? What do you think the percentage of it happening?
Well, it's all conditional, right? I mean, it's all based on what actions the U.S. takes. We're not facing a country that's hell bent on our destruction no matter what. as I mentioned, China is the most evil, warlike power we face. Even they would prefer not to fight the U.S. directly. They would prefer to wage economic war, take us over economically and politically, as they have with Biden, to some very substantial extent, not totally, of course. But that's kind of their strategy, is to take over, not to take over every country physically or militarily, but to make them so dependent on us, essentially transform the U.S. and other countries into colonial economies, in which we provide food and raw materials for China's massive manufacturing industries, and then they send us the high-tech manufactured goods that we need to survive. And they think that if they accomplish that, then our leaders will be forced to pursue pro-Chinese policies. And I think they're very much right. Already we're to the point where we are, our economy is massively dependent on China, even for weapons production. We couldn't even produce advanced weapons likely without Chinese rare earths. 80 to 90% of our rare earths we buy from China.
Wow.
So, we're not even self-sufficient. During World War II, we could have been blockaded on every side, Atlantic and Pacific, and we would have been just fine, because we produced everything that we needed, both in terms of food production and weapons, on our own, manufactured goods. We were the largest manufacturing power in the world. Today, China has at least twice the manufacturing industrial base that the U.S. has. So, it's a very different situation. We're kind of in the position of Japan during World War II, and China is kind of the position of the U.S., where if we had a protracted conventional war, they would outbuild us to such a massive extent. I mean, they would just keep moving eastward across the Pacific until they occupied the West Coast.
Wow. But this is information that people, I hope and pray that people wake up to what is really happening around the world right now. Before we finish tonight, is there anything else you want to let our audience here? Are you ready? Of all that we spoke, is there something you want them to remember?
Yeah, I mean, if all of your viewers could please go to the Real War newsletter at dpyne.substack.com. Once again, dpyne.substack.com.
Okay.
And subscribe. I have free and paid subscription options. Most of my articles are free, but some of the best stuff, I have paid for paid subscribers only.
Okay.
But that's where I post all my most important updates and stuff about, not just about real current affairs, but also about military history and what we could have done differently. So the U.S. wasn't in this strategic dilemma that we're facing right now on the verge of World War III. Also, I recently co-authored, as you may be aware, a new book under Peter's name. Peter Pry was the one who started the book, and then after his unfortunate passing, we Cindy Ayers, his successor as executive director, and myself, we finished the book along with some friends who contributed as well. And that book is called Catastrophe Now. It's available on Amazon.com, or you can just look up my name, David PYNE, PYNE, and you can find it that way also. But other than that, as I mentioned, we're at a stage where it's we're faced with biblical crisis, proportions and tribulations. And so, it's imperative that Americans collectively and individually, myself included, repent of our sins, turn back to God, Jesus Christ, and, pledge ourselves to him and to keep his commandments, because, it's not just sufficient to believe. We have to do his will. And we have to be seeking, the 10 Commandments. Very important that we keep those commandments. That is our security.
That's our
guarantee. That's our insurance policy for us and our families. If we keep his commandments, the Lord will protect us.
Amen. Amen to that. Thank you, David PYNE. Thank you, Mr. PYNE. That is great encouragement. And I totally agree with what he said. We need America to come to the Lord, put Christ first. At this moment, that's the number one. I mean, of all the stuff we've talked about, the Lord has to be number one. The greatest security you can have is when you put him first in everything. Well, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank, first of all, Mr. David PYNE for being with us tonight. And Are You Ready? Mr. PYNE, thank you once again. Thank you for being a blessing and all the information for being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Have a great night.
And I want to tell everybody else, thank you for being with us here on Are You Ready? Please share this information with many people. Many people need to hear what is being said to you. This is stuff is very important. So please, if you've never subscribed, please subscribe, thumbs up, and share this video. Everybody have a blessed evening. God loves you all. And remember, he's coming back soon. All right. Blessed evening. Good night. Good night, Mr. PYNE. I keep calling you Doctor. Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.